teachers and administrators are so important. So build relationships, build connections, show kids what they can be, because I think it's so much easier to be what you can see or what you can hear or what you can read, because they're like, oh, wow, well, I can do that too. Why not? Or that person did it. Well, that person looks like me. Like, I can do that too. So that's why I think a kid never was like, oh, I did really well on that standardized test, I can go to college or I can get that job. No, it's the connections, it's the building, it's the relationships, it's the exposure, just exposing kids to things. So many people become jobs and careers just because they were exposed to it.
Welcome to the Mindset on Resilience podcast. We're building a more confident, resilient, and mentally strong community. I am your host, Daniel Truelove, and I am excited about today's guest. Man, he's known all around the world, and I'm just excited that I get this opportunity to be able to sit here and spend some time with him. He is an educator, former principal. He's an author, podcaster, speaker. He's a man of many talents, a man of many gifts, and he is a man that we get an opportunity to speak with today, none other than Mr. Adam. Welcome. How you doing, man?
Daniel, what's going on, man? I'm pumped, dude. It's great to be here with you, man. Thanks for having me on.
Listen, I'm honored. I'm excited about having you. A lot of people may be thinking, you got a guy, California guy, uh, and then the Alabama guy. Where in the heck did we meet? And so we met at a conference. We were both speaking in Montgomery, Alabama, and I knew he was a speaker as soon as I walked in. Man, he was dressed fly, had his suit jacket on, man, looking really good. And I said, I know that this guy has to be some sort of a speaker, has to be doing something. And I had the honor of meeting you there, and it's we've been connected ever since.
Yeah, you never know who you're gonna meet and what's gonna happen. And I was my first time in Alabama, and it was great conference. It was fun. Kind of a different setup for that conference, which is cool, right? Everybody does kind of what they need to do for their members and for their professional development. But yeah, man, you and I went right up to you after you spoke because you kicked it off and just like lit the fire. And I'm like, I gotta meet this guy. And then we just started chatting a little bit in between. I had to get set up and all plugged in. And then when I was done, you and I went out into the hallway. We talked for like an hour. I was finally like, man, I gotta go because I had to go to the airport. And we could have talked for hours and hours, but we swapped cards and stayed in touch. And man, I've already learned a bunch from you, Daniel, and hopefully that relationship is mutually exclusive, man. It just being a thought partner with you, it's been great, man. So thanks for having me on the pod. I'm excited to dig in.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I have to give credit where it's due. I haven't mentioned this before, but uh, after that event, one of the things that you said to me was that you need to start a podcast. That was it. So I have to make sure that I give honor where it's due because that wasn't necessarily on my to-do list immediately. But after having a conversation with you, I started thinking about what that looks like for us, and I was like, you know what, you're absolutely right. And so I have to have you on the podcast since you're the person that what you're the one that gave me that. You know what, this is something that you need to do. So here we are.
Yeah, well, you meet people, and your keynote really got me thinking and really moved me. And then in our subsequent conversations, in my head, I'm like, man, I want to record this conversation that we were having in the hallway. And a podcast is different than like a keynote, obviously, but in my head, I'm like, man, more people need to hear about what you're doing and what you're thinking and the change that you're making in schools with kids and teachers and the community. And that's just the great, awesome thing about the platform like this. It's like, man, even if we never ever see each other again in person, hopefully we will, again someday. But we may never see each other again in person. But we can still be connected, and still I'm learning and listening, and it's great. So everybody, tell your friends about the podcast because Daniel's the real deal, and everybody got to be thinking about their mindset, especially when it comes to resilience.
Absolutely. So let's get right into it, man. You have done a lot of things within your career. Tell me a little bit about your journey to becoming a podcaster, speaker. How did you get to this space within your journey?
Yeah, I would say that it all happened kind of by accident, but nothing was planned. Let me just put it that way. I was just doing things as a teacher. I was just doing things, and then I moved to administration as an assistant principal. I started just doing things. I was doing presenting in my school district, and that they would ask me, "Hey, can you come and do this after school class for teachers about what you're doing?" And I was like, "Yeah, cool, right? Of 100%, let's do it." And then I became a principal, and I thought we were doing pretty creative, innovative, kind of different things at our school. And my superintendent would say, "Hey, I'm going to send this school from another district. They want to come, and can you show them around?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay." And at first my teachers weren't sure, but then they really felt good because they were able to talk about what they were doing and kind of put them on a pedestal, and they were feeling like, yeah, this was great. And then they also built connections with those teachers, which was great because then you're building your professional learning community, your network, just like you and I. And then so all those things I was just doing because I wanted to help change the world, just like you, Daniel. I wanted to help change the world and make it better for kids and teachers and communities all across the country. And then I started podcasting just because I started podcasting, Daniel, because as a principal, I was so tired of the boring newsletter that I would write every week that I didn't think any parents actually read. And I actually ran the analytics on that newsletter, and like 13% opened the newsletter. So a huge portion of my parent community was not receiving information. So I was like, you know what, we got to do it a little bit different way. So I was like, hey, podcasting is a thing. It was kind of starting. This was like 10 years ago. So we brought it into the school, and it was a great way to give information, and we were able to amplify voices of teachers, of students, of staff members, parent groups. It was totally awesome. So I would just say, like, I was doing all those things, and then by accident I became an author. Totally by accident. I'd been blogging for about 10 years, like 2 or 3 days a week, just putting my ideas out there. And then the stars aligned, and I wrote a book that really opened up a lot of opportunities, which in turn opened up opportunities that I didn't know were there. From a speaking standpoint, people started asking me to come speak, and they started paying me a little bit of money. And I was like, oh, wow. Then they started paying me a little bit more money. And I was like, wow, this is cool. I'm still a teacher, but I just have different students, and they're not in front of me. Like, Daniel, you have students all over the country. It's everybody that you get to work with. If you're doing the kind of work that we're doing, or you're in a classroom with 25 third graders, you're still a teacher. It's just the form of educating and connecting. And then I just kind of took a leap 6 years ago and left my full-time job in a school district and my benefits and my retirement. And I've been doing this full-time ever since. So, the moral in all of that, I think, is do things. Number one, do things. And you don't always need to know um, where you're going to end up with it, but just do things that feel good, that are in your brain. And the more you do it, the more you're actually going to find things to do. It's kind of like if you and your wife buy a new car. Let's say you guys buy a new blue Toyota Camry. You and your wife start seeing blue Toyota Camrys. Everywhere. You're like, babe, everybody's got our car. What the heck? They were always there. You just didn't see them because it wasn't on the frontal lobe of your brain, or whatever the brain research is. So I just kept doing things that felt good. I was trying to solve problems and help people, and just be that kind of connector and that magnet. First and foremost for the teachers and the staff that I worked with, and then it spread to because of social media, it spread to people all over the country. And I still like to do it. It's just like, hey, I just want to help people, and I love being a connector. I think our world is a better place when we understand each other better, and I think we understand each other better when we are connected and when we have relationships. I think you and I are a really great example. We had this kind of like fortuitous connection. Most conferences are not like the one that you and I did. Usually it's you're the speaker or I'm the speaker. That was like the perfect setup for you and I to actually meet each other. Or you're on Thursday and I'm on Friday, and we don't see each other. We just kind of we cross at the airport, and we don't even realize that we're crossing at the airport. So everything happens for a reason, and I'm so glad that we were together there in Montgomery, Alabama. And I think, yeah, everybody listening, just think about that. Do what feels good, do what's positive, try to connect people, get to know people, build relationships, and things will happen.
I think I want to go there for a second because one of the things you said is like just go and do stuff, but a lot of people are afraid to do. So what? Like, tell me a little bit of that. Why? What gives you the freedom, the confidence, whatever it may be, to like, I'm gonna do this because some people may stuck in a lot of people are stuck in the door. Let's just be honest.
Yeah, I put something on. I put something on Facebook the other day, where, like, sometimes good enough is good enough. And I think, most people wait to get the thing that they want to do to a place of perfection, which to me is just completely unattainable, because I don't even know what perfection is. It's gonna get better. Just keep putting in the work, keep being creative, keep bringing people onto your team. Again, kind of like you and me. I'm like, hey, like, what'd you think about my keynote? You gave me feedback, and you're like, Adam, what'd you think? And we were talking about some different things. Hey, did you think about this? You think about that? And so many people just are. Most things never get done, I think, for two reasons, Daniel. Number one is they simply just don't get started. It's like analysis paralysis. People wait and they think and they talk, and then, oh my gosh, a year has gone by and they haven't even gone anywhere. Or the second reason I think most things never get done is just because they're too complicated. People think big and they try to act big. So I always tell people, think big, act small, have a really big idea, but make your first step kind of the size of a post-it note. Like, just think of like an old school yellow post-it note. That gets you to first base, or that gets you to the 10-yard line. And then once you're done with that, you're not done. Get another post-it note, and then that gets you the 20-yard line or second base. If we're going to use a sports analogy. And I think people just overanalyze, and they're like, "Wait, me?" They have imposter syndrome, and I don't know. And I'm like, you know what? Adam is just a person. Daniel is just a person. We've just decided to open the door and step out and start walking down the street. And everybody listening, you can too. You 100% can. I mean, there's honestly nothing special about me. I just started doing things, and then things started to happen. And everybody out there, you can do the same.
And I think that one thing that you said is like there's imposter syndrome, but I think not too many people realize that um, there's space for everybody. No matter what it is, nothing is oversaturated. But I think one of the things that's super important is that if there's something in your heart, there's a desire there. That desire is there for a reason. So who cares if a million people are doing it? Does it really matter if that's something that you want to do? But I think that thing that you mentioned, which is big. So we think big. And if we can't see something being big, then we're like, oh, well, then that's not, monumental, or that's not. No, if you have an idea, you have a desire in your heart, and you do it, that's big. Why? Because now you prove to yourself everything that I think, everything that I want, I'm willing to put in whatever it takes in order for it to do it. That's where the magic lies. But sometimes we think the magic lies in it being that, and the magic lies in what you just said. Just do it.
Yep. Yeah. There's a quote from Usain Bolt. I spent 7 years training to run 9 seconds, and people see the 9 seconds and they're like, "Oh, dang!" And obviously, there's only one Usain Bolt, but you got to put the work in, and it's gonna get better if you put the work in, and you're consistent. Like, my kids, I have a 12 and a 10-year-old, and they play soccer. We love soccer in our house. And there's something that soccer players do called juggling, not like with your hands, but with your feet, right? Juggle, juggle, juggle. And, you're always trying to get better touches and do your juggle. And my kids, years ago, they were like, "Oh, I don't like juggling. It's so hard. I can't do it." Like, they're throwing a fit. And I'm like, "No, you're going to juggle every day for 30 minutes. And it's going to get better." And then they would only try to juggle with their dominant foot. My daughters are righty, my son's a lefty. I'm like, "No, you got to juggle with both feet. Right, left, right, left." And at first it looks awkward because you don't have the balance, you don't have the touch. And then you know what happens after a week of 30 minutes a day? Oh, their touches start to get a little bit better. And then after a couple months, my daughter's like doing 250 juggles. Boom, boom. And all her friends on her team are like, "Whoa, you can do both feet? oh my gosh. And she's like, uh-huh. And she looks at me all side-eye, and I'm like, yeah, proud papa moment. But the point is just, put a little bit of work in. You don't need to train like Usain Bolt or like Steph Curry, get to the gym at 4 in the morning. Like that's not always the goal, but just a little bit better every day, I think is really, really important.
Absolutely. But I think what you mentioned something earlier. We're talking about when it comes to just doing. You are the innovation guy. Like when I was sitting through your presentation, like a lot of the ideas that you brought up were more so about innovation. But you have to start something to recognize that there is something that you can innovate with it. So tell me a little bit about how you came up with all these innovative ideas, or how innovation became your thing.
Yeah, so I think it started when I was a teacher, and honestly, simply, Daniel, I taught third grade, fourth grade, and fifth grade, and honestly, I was bored with my teaching, and I'm not that old. I'm 44 years old, so I think I started when I was like 23, 24. This was before iPhones. It was before Chromebooks. When I left the classroom, we had a computer lab, and we had just got iPods. For everybody out there that's under 25, an iPod looks like an old phone, but all it did was play music, right? And there was like apps on it, and we thought we were super high tech. So it really just started from a standpoint of like, gosh, if I'm bored teaching this way, how do my students feel? So I just that, and then we turn back around and we kind of reverse engineer those strategies to engage. We're also getting our kids ready for this new dynamic complex world that they're living and growing up in. And what Daniel's talking about, I talk about, I talk a lot about new collar jobs, programming, robotics, 3D printing. And the coolest thing about those three examples is to teach those to somebody else. You actually don't even need to know how to do the thing. You need to know that it's a good thing to do, and bring your students or your teachers, if you're doing professional development, bring them on the journey. Teachers are the expert in kids, curriculum, and relationships. Kids will figure out the new thing. And if they don't know how to do the new thing, there is some guy in Tennessee that has a YouTube channel that will teach you how to do the thing. And everybody knows what I'm talking about. Like the resources are out there. I think it's a really fun, great time to be in education. There's different challenges, obviously, that we're all going through, post COVID and everything, and different political things, which we're not going to get into. But there's a lot happening. But it's more exciting. You see that engagement rather than just you're substituting something or here's a worksheet. And kids, you, you're not getting them ready if they're not talking and collaborating and problem solving. I want teachers that want to compete and that want to squeeze all the juice out of that lemon, and not just be like, okay, this is okay. Uh-huh. Bye-bye. And I'm using a very kind of, monotone, melancholy voice. And don't get me wrong, again, I love teachers, right? Like I am a teacher. I work with teachers every week. But you're going to get more out of your students. You're going to have less behavior issues because kids are engaged, and they find that purpose. They have more of a mission, like, oh, I want to solve this problem, and I want to do it with my friend Daniel that's in my class, or a small group, or hey, I'm going to go on the computer to do this and build this, and I'm going to present this to my class. So honestly, it just came from I was disengaged in my own classroom as a teacher, and I was like, man, if I am, how are the students feeling? And I don't know if enough teachers think about that. What am I do my what I want to be in my own class? How are my students feeling in my class? I think it's a really important question, for everyone to think about.
I think that's one of the most amazing questions, because I was a student that got bored very easily. And one of the questions I ask when I do professional development on innovation, engagement, things like that, is if they're not engaged, then you're not engaging. And it's a very strong statement. But my when I was working at a university in Arizona, my VP, I was in the training department, and my VP told me that literally that same statement. He says, if they're not engaged, we have to take ownership of that. You're the one that's not engaging if their heads are down, right? If their phones are out, if they much rather be doing something else than listening to you or engaging and interacting with people that are in the classroom, that's something that's on you. the fact that you said, "Hey, I would actually be bored in my class, and I'm going to do something about that." I think that that's an extreme amount of ownership, but it's allowed for you to go on this amazing journey that has now allowed for other people to to step up the innovation and step up the engagement, within their classes. And I think it's amazing.
Yeah, it's been fun. Like it's fun, and I feel like teaching is not that collaborative. Most of the time, it's just a teacher in their classroom with their students. And I bring up the collaboration piece because how often are you really talking and learning and growing and pushing with your colleagues? School districts have small amounts of time built in. On Wednesday, school's out 30 minutes early and they have professional development time, or whatever that might be. But the majority is it's just you in your classroom. So we have to get out of our silos and we have to connect, because if we don't, how do you know what's out there? And I would say especially for school leaders, I was a elementary school principal for 7 years. Principals have to get out of their building figuratively, and also really in real life, to just go see and observe and what's happening, and make sure that you're reading and consuming content that's outside of the education space. Read business articles, read books about military leadership, just so you can see what is happening and you're like, oh, that's a good idea. That's not going to work perfectly for what I'm doing, but I'm going to take 10% or 20% of that and integrate it into my classroom to make it more engaging, but also to just prepare kids for this new dynamic, complex world that is changing. Daniel, there's jobs right now that weren't careers 6 months ago. Artificial intelligence, I think, is like the biggest one where there's so much change. But take that away. There's a job that wasn't a job 6 months ago. So it's completely impossible for teachers or educators to get kids ready for every job that is yet to be invented or created, but we can give them the collaborative skills, the communication, the problem solving, all those skills to be ready for whatever job. It's kind of like you and me. You work with educators, so do I. But if a real estate company called us up and they're like, "Hey, we want you to come and talk to our group," it's going to look a little bit different, but we have the foundation. We have the interaction skills. We know how to tell stories and bring an audience around. Our content would change a little bit, right? Because the audience is different. But we already have those things in place. I think it's the same type of concept, getting them ready for whatever's out there. And I think, building their confidence, I think, is number one. When people feel good about themselves and they have that good self-worth, I think that's a really, really important thing. Let people know that you care about them. Choose your words wisely, because kids remember how you talk to them. They remember how you talk to them for their entire life. And then I think the third one is, just make sure is what you're doing have a purpose. What is the purpose of you doing that thing? And if you can't articulate that to yourself, to your team, or to your leadership, then, like, why are you doing it? What is the point?
hmm I love it. And so now, one thing I love about what you're saying is that for somebody that has so much charisma, for somebody that has so much passion, and so many answers, you would think that, oh man, you got the answers to everything. I mean, hardships, challenges, things like that. Well, you've never experienced any of those type of things. You're an author, and right here you see it, Kids Deserve It. Listen, if you do not have this book right here, Kids Deserve It, I'm telling you right now, I want to make sure I have it right here. You all need to get this book. He describes it as the easiest education book that you will ever read. I agree with that. Make sure you get that. But you've done many things. Tell me a little bit about your resilience journey. Have you ever had any obstacles in life?
Yeah. Yeah. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. We were on the phone, and admittedly, like, I think about that, and um I had a great childhood. I had great parents. That I was great at school. I didn't love school, but I was great at school. Great at sports. And I think the biggest obstacle for me was when I realized that. Thankfully, I realized that I was not going to play Major League Baseball, because I had to figure out, what am I going to do with the rest of my life, and that was a big kind of hit, because I didn't put energy and effort into my school. I just didn't really engage in high school, and that was tough. And I was kind of like a boat without a rudder, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And I ended up going to junior college for a year, which was a really great, really great experience. And I transferred and went to college and just kind of majored in whatever was the easiest major, and that was speech communication, because turned out I was good at talking. Hey, it turns out that's what I do for a living, is I give speeches. And then after college, I just kind of didn't know. I kind of had kind of a couple of false starts. I thought I wanted to be a police officer, maybe like a special agent with the FBI, and then I landed on teaching. And I feel like I could have done a lot of things, to be honest, but like my dad was a teacher, so that's why I kind of chose that. And I knew I didn't want to be in a classroom for like a 30-year career, so I got into administration and leadership. So I think just kind of, not totally knowing what I wanted to do with my life that was hard. I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up, to be honest, Daniel. I mean, I have an amazing wife and family, so thankfully I have an amazing core, that's here to support me. But yeah, everybody has a little bit different story. Some people are just, grow up and it's tough. And I know you have an amazing story, because I heard your story, when we were together in Montgomery, Alabama. And I think it's, yeah, I mean, I think it's important just even for adults, 'cause I think a lot of people are maybe just going through life and they're not sure what are they going to do, and it's hard to keep going sometimes. And that was me in college, and even post college I was teaching, and I was like, is this what I want to do, and am I wasting time? And I would say the biggest lesson that I learned from all that is you have time. If you're 25, you're young. Remember when we were 25? I thought I was old, right? Like, I did. And now I'm 44 and I feel like I'm 19. Like, I feel like I'm just getting started. So I think with all of that being said, don't forget, you have time. My favorite book I've read over the last 10 years is called Where the Crawdads Sing. It's by Delia Owens, and she was 70 years old when she wrote that book. It was her first novel. So everybody listening, if you think you're too old or too new or too young or too rural or too whatever, stop. Because she was 70 years old when she wrote that book, her first novel. The first year it came out, her publisher printed 28,000 copies, which is not a lot of books. The first year they sold 3 million. To date, they've sold 15 million copies, and they made a movie about the book. So the point of me telling you that is to tie back to my kind of lesson of just, be patient. Even at 70, you can have a new idea and you can get after it. Get your focus on, make sure your mindset's in place, build your team around you, because you can't do it alone. And if you think you can go on the journey alone, I think you're wrong. It's going to be lonely. It's going to be hard. You need teammates on that team, and just start building and doing and building and doing, and stop and then adjust it and innovate it and break it, and then do and build and do and build, and then stop and then innovate and break it and talk and have conversations. And you're going to get maybe not to where you thought you were going to go, but you're going to get to where you were meant to go.
That's good. That's really good. Now, I'm really interested in this. Like, what is your mindset? And I know you're a reader. You hear this all the time. Leaders are readers, and man, you love reading. One thing when I'm on social media, I know there's two things you're going to be doing. You're either going to be running, you're going to be reading. Those are two things that I know for a fact. Those are two things you're going to be doing. But where did this mindset comes? Because it seems like even though you had some spaces in time where you didn't know. I didn't know what I was going to do after high school, but you decided to do something. Well, I thought it was going to be a police officer then, but you just kept doing. Where did this mindset come from that allows for you to have this optimism about the doing?
Yeah, I would just say, like, probably just my parents always were there, and they were always building my confidence and telling me, Adam, you can do and you can be whatever you want to be. And I think I just kept that throughout my entire life. And I've had my back against the wall, with a job or a relationship or finances. I think we've all had our back against the wall at some point. And yeah, there's been tough times for sure as a young adult. But I never thought that I didn't. I didn't belong. And I was always like, hey, I can do that too. If they can do it, I can do it. And hey, everybody listening, if you want to be a speaker like Daniel and Adam, you can do it too. Just start doing it, right? Like we just started earlier than you, if you haven't started yet. So, um, and that's why I think teachers and administrators are so important. So build relationships, build connections, show kids what they can be, because I think it's so much easier to be what you can see or what you can hear or what you can read, because they're like, oh, wow, well, I can do that too. Why not? Or that person did it. Well, that person looks like me. Like, I can do that too. So that's why I think a kid never was like, oh, I did really well on that standardized test. I can go to college or I can get that job. No, it's the connections, it's the building, it's the relationships, it's the exposure, just exposing kids to things. So many people become jobs and careers just because they were exposed to it at a certain time. It's like, why did you become a pilot? Oh, well, I went to an Air Force base for an air show and I was like, I want to do that. And then boom, it opened up a whole, they went to the Naval Academy, they flew for the Navy, and now they're a pilot with United Airlines or whatever that might be. And it's all just for exposure. And I think with the world that we live in with social media and just media in general, it's so much easier now than 50 years ago to kind of give kids exposure and show them about things, because you can, and not just with like VR, but you can with a movie or a video or do a Zoom with somebody, and people are willing to do that. So I think that's kind of like the long version of your question, but started with my parents, and then I just realized early on, if somebody else can do it, so can I. And everybody listening, if I can do it, so can you.
Yeah. Do you have to because like in our upbringings and some people's upbringings may be a little bit different, and so in our upbringings you may have had your parents there, but now are there times to where it's transferred from the parents' voice and now you're your own confidence at this point in time? Like, do you ever have to remind yourself that like I've got this, like in moments to where that maybe you're facing something like young adulthood challenges, uh, current day challenges, like do you ever have to remind yourself that like I really got this, or is it that's not necessary anymore?
Yeah, maybe like maybe a few times, and I think it's been before, maybe like early on in my speaking career, where I had some really big events. Like early on, I had this really big event, like 5,000 teachers in Texas, and that's a lot of teachers. And it was like this round stage, so there was like people all around me, and the energy it was insane, and but I just really try to like bottle it and put it back in. But I was like, okay, take a deep breath, focus on your message. You know what to do. You've done this before. The venue is just different. And I'm like, hey, if somebody else can do it, so can I. So like if a real estate company called me and they're like, Adam, come speak. Yeah, I mean, I'd call you, I'd be like, hey, Daniel, what do you think I should talk about? I know my message, but how do I craft the story so it hits home with a different group? So now, being smarter, I would lean on my peers. Like, hey, Daniel, call me when you have a chance. I want to talk something through with you, right? And you'd be like, this and that, think about this. And then I know you'd be like, Adam, you can do this. Because if you called me, I'd talk through, like, hey, think about this, think about that. And you're like, oh, yeah, yeah. Like, Daniel, you can do this. So now I think, that we're adults, obviously, we love our families, but we go to other people, to do that, because if I ask my wife a question, she wouldn't know, because she works in an entirely different field. So again, that's why it's so important to have your people, find people to be friends with and connect with, because we are better when we are together and supporting each other, not in competition. You and I are not in competition. I'm here for you, man, and I know you're here for me, and that's the best thing.
That's when I literally just shared that message with a group of kids. I was speaking at a school. It had to be, it was yesterday, and man, it was like they were all walking the individual race, and they were wondering why they were experiencing challenges. Man, I had hundreds of kids that would literally lined up to come and talk to me. We literally had to take it out of the gym, go into a room for them to, because it was like just so many kids to really be able to have some type of structure and not to have 100 of the same conversations over again. but literally they were all asking the same question. Oh, like it's like, well, how do you all have the same problem, but there's no collaboration? You know, and so, but we need people. Like we weren't supposed to walk individually throughout this entire journey, and that's the one thing that I love about what you shared. And so, man, I think you are just a wealth of wisdom. Everything that you man, you give me so many different pieces of wisdom advice that has benefited me greatly, benefited my marriage, our business greatly. And so the question I have is like for educators, for individuals in life, whoever may be listening to this, what is some advice, what's some wisdom that you have? We have this segment that we end with, and we call it Better Days Ahead. So for somebody that's out there that may be, experiencing some adversity, looking to trying to overcome that, what's some advice, what's some mantra that you live by to encourage them that there are better days ahead?
Yeah, yeah. So I got two things. The first one is I'm not a huge. As I've gotten older, I've started to enjoy country music more. I used to kind of be anything but country, ABC. But there's a song by Travis Tritt, and the song is called "It's a Great Day to Be Alive." And sometimes my kids will complain about something, and I'll just like from my phone play "It's a Great Day to Be Alive" through our like Amazon Alexa, and I think that's that one. The other song that I like to play sometimes, we didn't talk about ego, but I was thinking about that as we were talking. Make sure everybody listening, keep your ego in check. Because I think that is really important. There's a great song by Carly Simon, "You're So Vain." You're so vain. And sometimes my daughter's like looking in the mirror too much, or like doing this, and I'm like, don't be vain, don't have any ego. And I would say like the last piece of advice, you talked about my love of books and reading. Everybody listening, I just encourage you to read more books. And a lot of adults that I talk to just don't read books. And thank you for the compliment, Daniel, about having just wisdom and ideas. And I'll tell you, it it's not just from my brain. I think a lot, and I have a lot of creativity. I feel in my brain, but so many ideas get better when I'm reading a book, and I take a lesson in a book, and then I can tie it to something that I'm thinking about in my brain. So you're not just living on an island solo. I'm like, hey, come over to my island so we can talk about it and make this idea better. And I do that through books. And I just encourage people to read books in different genres, read books by authors that are different. And I just think it's just I just finished "It Worked for Me" by Colin Powell. Colin Powell was General Colin Powell. A lot of people know his name just because it was like Desert Storm and stuff. Just a really really great book. I mean, such good insight. The other book I just finished, I've read two books so far in 2024, was by Colson Whitehead about the Underground Railroad, and just amazingly researched. Just one of my favorite books I've read in a long time. And I have like six other books that are on the hopper to read. And I just recommend people to, if you're an educator, read books in education space, read books in the business space, read books in military leadership, not like military war, but like leadership and thought and how to build teams. So many of my ideas get better two ways: when I talk about them with somebody else, or I read a book and I make a connection, and then that makes that idea even better. So in 2024, everybody read more books.
Read more books. I love it. One thing I want to say is that you said it's a great day to be alive, and one of the things that I found out in my studies is that, and I don't know if everybody has made the connection between this. There are scientific connections between vanity and depression. So I remember sitting through a course, and I was doing some more, personal growth and development. And they said, think about it is when you think about yourself all the time, you're gonna find something wrong. It's all about you. It's all about you. It's all about you. It's all about you. And but they said one of the greatest ways in order to actually cure that is to not be selfish. When the world is not centered around you, then guess what? You are not the only thing that's on your mind. You know that what it could be. What it's a great day to be alive because what your perspective is not your sole perspective. And man, I thank you for all the wisdom and advice and all the gems that you dropped today. Everybody give it up for my main man, Mr. Adam. Welcome. Obviously, it was a pleasure speaking to you, and I thank you so much for your time.